Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question to begin. If you don't set the price on your value, how can you expect anyone else to pay it? You see, relationships, like life itself, are negotiations of value. But here's the painful truth, one many shy away from. The way men treat women, whether like queens or like options, is rarely arbitrary. It's a reflection of dynamics shaped by personal boundaries, self-worth, and the perception of mutual respect. Now, let me be clear. This is not about blaming the victim. It's not a matter of saying you deserve poor treatment. What I'm saying is that human interactions operate according to a set of psychological rules, and we ignore those rules at our peril. If we are to understand why some women are cherished while others are overlooked, we must take a hard look at human nature, at both its beauty and its flaws. How others treat you is often a reflection of how you treat and perceive yourself. Value is not simply something assigned to you by others, it is primarily self-determined. This is an essential truth that applies to relationships, personal development, and the way we navigate the world. When we talk about being treated with respect, care, and dignity, the foundation of that treatment often begins internally, with how you value yourself and what you demand in return from others. Human beings are wired to pick up on social cues. Our behavior, body language, and choices signal to others how we expect to be treated. A person who carries themselves with confidence and self-assurance communicates, consciously or unconsciously, that they are deserving of respect and consideration. Conversely, someone who diminishes their worth, whether by tolerating poor treatment, neglecting their needs, or avoiding conflict, signals that they are willing to accept less. Secondly, this concept doesn't imply arrogance or entitlement, but rather a strong sense of self-awareness and discipline. When you treat yourself with care and respect, you are setting a precedent for how others should interact with you. It's not just about demanding respect, it's about embodying the qualities that command respect naturally. People who value themselves invest in their personal growth, whether through education, maintaining their physical and emotional well-being, or pursuing goals that align with their deeper sense of purpose. This kind of investment radiates outward, influencing the way others perceive and respond to them. However, self-determining your value also requires courage. It means saying no to people and situations that undermine your worth. It's about refusing to settle for mediocrity in relationships, even when the alternative feels uncomfortable or lonely. When you tolerate poor treatment or allow yourself to be undervalued, you inadvertently communicate that such treatment is acceptable. This is a painful truth to confront, but it is empowering once you understand it. Living by this principle requires a willingness to enforce boundaries, which can be challenging, especially when you fear losing a connection or being perceived as difficult. But in the long term, setting these boundaries is a powerful act of self-respect. It teaches others that your time, energy, and presence are not to be taken for granted. Moreover, self-determined value isn't about superficial attributes. It's not about external markers like physical appearance, wealth, or status. It's rooted in character, integrity, and how you choose to show up in the world. People who are genuinely valued by others don't just demand respect, they live in a way that inspires it. Ultimately, when you determine your value, you take ownership of your worth. You stop waiting for others to validate you, and instead, you set the standard. This doesn't guarantee perfect relationships or interactions, but it does filter out those who are unwilling or unable to meet the bar you've set. In doing so, you create space for relationships that are grounded in mutual respect and genuine appreciation. The power in the end lies within you. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define what we will and will not tolerate in our relationships and interactions. They're essential in shaping how others treat us. When a person establishes clear and firm boundaries, they communicate an expectation of respect and consideration. These boundaries are not barriers meant to push others away. Rather, they are a guide that sets the tone for healthy, balanced relationships. But the presence of boundaries signals self-respect. They convey to others that you value your time, energy, and emotional well-being, and that you will not compromise those things lightly. Boundaries are not just about saying no to harmful or disrespectful behavior. They are about actively creating an environment where mutual respect and understanding can flourish. Without boundaries, there is no clear framework for how a person wants to be treated, leaving room for confusion, missteps, or even exploitation. The way you enforce your boundaries has a profound impact on how others perceive and treat you. When a person sets a boundary and stands firm in enforcing it, they communicate strength and self-assurance. This firmness, however, must be accompanied by consistency. A boundary that is stated but not upheld loses its power as it sends mixed signals. For example, if you express that certain behaviors are unacceptable but continue to tolerate them, it undermines the boundary you initially set. This inconsistency not only allows disrespect to continue, but also diminishes your credibility in the eyes of others. Setting boundaries is not an act of hostility, it is an act of care for yourself and for others. Healthy boundaries create clarity in relationships by reducing misunderstandings and establishing expectations. They provide a structure within which respect can thrive. For instance, if someone repeatedly disregards your time by being late or canceling plans, setting a boundary could involve communicating your feelings and limiting how often you make yourself available to them in the future. This action isn't punitive, it's a way of protecting your emotional well-being while sending a clear message about your values. One of the challenges people face with boundaries is the fear of rejection. Setting limits can feel risky because it involves standing up for yourself, even if it creates discomfort or conflict. However, boundaries often serve as a filter. Those who genuinely respect and value you will adapt to your boundaries, understanding that they are a reflection of your self-respect. Conversely, those who consistently push against or disregard your limits reveal their unwillingness to engage in a respectful and reciprocal relationship. For example, boundaries also foster empowerment. When you set and enforce them, you take control of your interactions rather than being at the mercy of others' behavior. This control creates a sense of personal agency and reduces resentment. It allows you to interact with others from a place of strength rather than obligation or fear. In the end, boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about defining yourself. They communicate your standards and protect your well-being, ensuring that the treatment you receive aligns with the respect you deserve. Tolerating poor treatment reinforces it. This simple yet profound truth underscores the dynamic nature of human relationships. When someone mistreats you and you allow it without consequence, you send a signal that such behavior is acceptable. This is not to place blame on the recipient of mistreatment, but to emphasize the power of action or inaction in shaping interpersonal dynamics. Human behavior operates in feedback loops. Actions are often reinforced by the responses they receive. When disrespect or dismissiveness is met with silence, compliance, or forgiveness without accountability, the person engaging in that behavior is likely to continue it. Over time, this pattern becomes ingrained not because the person is necessarily malicious, but because there is no deterrent or reason to change. In relationships, this dynamic can lead to an imbalance where one party feels taken for granted while the other becomes accustomed to prioritizing their needs at the expense of the others. Tolerating poor treatment can stem from a variety of factors, including fear of conflict, a desire to maintain harmony, or insecurity about one's worth. People may convince themselves that the behavior is temporary or that they can change the other person. However, this approach rarely leads to positive outcomes. Instead, it creates a cycle where disrespectful behavior becomes normalized. By excusing or enduring mistreatment, you unintentionally lower the standard for how you deserve to be treated. Breaking this cycle requires recognizing the power of boundaries and asserting them with consistency. When you refuse to tolerate poor treatment, you disrupt the feedback loop that allows it to persist. This disruption sends a clear message: this is not acceptable, and I value myself enough to demand better. Enforcing boundaries may feel uncomfortable at first, especially for those unaccustomed to confrontation, but it is a necessary step in establishing mutual respect. It's important to understand that tolerating poor treatment doesn't only affect the dynamic between two people, it also impacts your self-esteem and emotional well-being. Each time you accept disrespect, it chips away at your sense of self-worth. Over time, this can create feelings of resentment, frustration, or even hopelessness. Conversely, standing up for yourself, even in small ways, reinforces your own value and builds inner strength. Taking a stand doesn't always mean walking away from a relationship. It can involve having honest, direct conversations where you communicate your feelings and set clear expectations. Sometimes people are unaware of the impact of their behavior and are willing to adjust when they understand the harm they've caused. However, if someone consistently disregards your boundaries or refuses to change, walking away may be the healthiest choice. Ultimately, tolerating poor treatment reinforces a cycle that diminishes both parties. It allows one person to continue harmful behavior unchecked while undermining the other's sense of self-worth. Breaking this pattern requires courage, self-awareness, and a commitment to self-respect. When you refuse to accept less than you deserve, you set the stage for healthier, more fulfilling relationships, built on mutual respect and understanding. Human interactions operate within feedback loops, where actions and responses shape the behavior of both parties over time. This dynamic is especially relevant in relationships, where patterns of treatment are co-created. When men and women interact, their choices and responses reinforce or challenge the dynamics that unfold between them. Understanding this principle is key to fostering healthier, more respectful relationships. People are remarkably attuned to the signals they receive from others. Every interaction provides feedback about what is acceptable, valued, or dismissed. For example, if one person consistently prioritizes another's needs over their own without reciprocity, it creates an imbalance that the other party may unconsciously exploit. This is not always intentional or malicious. It's simply human nature to adapt to the patterns that are presented. Over time, this feedback loop reinforces behavior, or positive or negative. Relationships are rarely one-sided in their dynamics. Both individuals contribute consciously or unconsciously to the tone and quality of their interactions. If someone treats another person poorly and encounters no pushback, they may perceive that behavior as permissible. On the other hand, when someone is met with firm boundaries or clear consequences for disrespectful actions, they are more likely to adjust their behavior. This adjustment happens because humans, by nature, seek equilibrium in their social environments. Recognizing the role of feedback loops in relationships means accepting that your actions and reactions influence how others treat you. If you consistently reward disrespect by tolerating it, you are inadvertently signaling that such behavior is acceptable. Conversely, when you assertively address poor treatment, you interrupt the feedback loop that allows it to persist. This interruption forces the other person to reconsider their actions and adapt accordingly. However, it's important to note that feedback loops are not only about addressing negative behavior. They also play a crucial role in reinforcing positive dynamics. When kindness, respect, and effort are reciprocated and appreciated, these behaviors are encouraged and more likely to continue. In healthy relationships, positive feedback loops create a foundation of trust, support, and mutual respect. This is why it's not enough to merely avoid tolerating poor treatment. It's equally vital to actively nurture and reward behavior that aligns with your values and expectations. Breaking unhealthy feedback loops requires self-awareness and intentional action. It involves examining the patterns in your relationships and identifying the ways in which your own behavior may be contributing to dynamics you find unsatisfying. This is not about taking responsibility for someone else's actions, but rather about recognizing your role in shaping the interaction. Addressing unhealthy dynamics can be uncomfortable, especially if it requires challenging established patterns or confronting conflict. However, the discomfort of asserting boundaries or changing behavior is a necessary investment in healthier, more balanced relationships. By consciously influencing the feedback loops in your interactions, you empower yourself to create connections that are based on mutual respect and understanding. Ultimately, feedback loops in relationships are a natural reflection of human behavior. They can either perpetuate harmful patterns or build healthy ones, depending on how we choose to engage with them. The power lies in understanding these dynamics and making intentional choices that reinforce the treatment you deserve. Living as a queen requires discipline, self-respect, and an intentional commitment to maintaining high standards for how you treat yourself and allow others to treat you. It's not about arrogance, entitlement, expecting people to cater to your every whim. It's about embodying a level of value that naturally inspires others to respond with respect and admiration. To be treated like a queen, you must first live as one, and that begins with how you govern your own life. A queen isn't a figure of chaos or complacency. She rules her domain with purpose, order, and clarity. Similarly, a woman who wishes to be treated with the respect and care she deserves must live in a way that reflects those qualities. This means developing habits and routines that prioritize personal growth, emotional well-being, and self-care. It requires discipline to stay true to your values and to avoid compromising them for the sake of temporary validation or convenience. Self-respect is at the heart of this mindset. A queen doesn't allow others to diminish her value because she knows her worth is not negotiable. She sets boundaries not as a means of shutting people out, but as a way of defining what is acceptable in her interactions. Living with self-respect also involves being intentional about the people you surround yourself with. Relationships, whether romantic or platonic, should add value to your life rather than drain it. Choosing your company wisely is an act of discipline that reflects your own sense of worth. Discipline also involves taking responsibility for your own happiness and success. A queen doesn't wait for someone to come and rescue her, and she takes charge of her life and works toward her goals with focus and determination. This proactive approach to life communicates to others that you are not looking to be completed by someone else. You are already whole. When you live in this way, you naturally attract people who respect and admire your strength rather than those who seek to take advantage of it. Another aspect of living as a queen is knowing when to walk away from situations that do not align with your values or that undermine your self-respect. This requires courage and, again, discipline. It's not easy to let go of relationships, habits, or environments that feel familiar, even when they are harmful. It is not the other way around, but it is very frustrating when they take away reasons. However, by staying in situations that erode your sense of self-worth, you betray the very discipline needed to live as a queen. Walking away is not a sign of weakness. It is an affirmation of your strength and an act of self-preservation. Ultimately, living as a queen means leading by example in your own life. It's about setting a standard for how you treat yourself so that others naturally rise to meet it. This discipline creates an aura of confidence and respect that is difficult to ignore. While it may not guarantee perfect treatment from everyone, it filters out those unwilling to meet your standards and opens the door to relationships built on mutual respect and admiration. You teach others how to treat you through your actions, choices, and the standards you set for yourself. This is not just about words or expectations you communicate explicitly. It's about the way you live your life, the behavior you tolerate, and the respect you demand. Every interaction sends a message about what you will accept and how you expect to be treated. When you consistently uphold your standards, you train others to respect them. How you show up in the world matters. People observe and respond to your energy, boundaries, and self-presentation. If you carry yourself with confidence and self-respect, you signal that you value yourself and that others should too. Conversely, if you allow yourself to be disrespected or taken for granted without consequence, you inadvertently teach people that such treatment is permissible. This principle applies to all relationships, whether romantic, professional, or platonic. Teaching others how to treat you begins with understanding your own worth. Self-respect is the foundation upon which you build the way you interact with others. You don't value yourself, it becomes difficult to expect others to value you. People tend to take cues from how you treat yourself. For example, if you neglect your needs, overextend yourself, or consistently prioritize others at the expense of your well-being, you may send the message that your time and energy are less important. On the other hand, when you prioritize self-care and set clear boundaries, you show others that you respect yourself and expect the same from them. Consistency is crucial in teaching others how to treat you. It's not enough to set boundaries or expectations once and then waver when they're tested. People will naturally push boundaries to see how firm they are. If you're inconsistent, enforcing a boundary one day but ignoring it the next, it creates confusion and diminishes the effectiveness of your standards. Consistency communicates that you are serious about your values and that you won't compromise them to avoid conflict or discomfort. Accountability also plays a key role. When someone crosses a boundary or treats you poorly, it's important to address the issue directly and assertively. Ignoring disrespect or brushing it off to avoid confrontation only reinforces the behavior. Addressing it doesn't mean being aggressive or confrontational. It means calmly and clearly expressing how their actions affect you and what you expect moving forward. This not only corrects the behavior, but also reinforces your standards. It's important to remember that teaching others how to treat you is a long-term process. People may not always respond positively right away, and some may resist or even criticize your boundaries. However, those who genuinely respect and care for you will adjust and grow to honor the standards you've set. On the other hand, those who repeatedly disregard your boundaries reveal their lack of respect for you, and it may be necessary to distance yourself from such relationships. Ultimately, the way people treat you reflects what you've taught them is acceptable. By living with self-respect, setting and enforcing boundaries, and being consistent in your expectations, you empower yourself to cultivate relationships that align with your worth. In doing so, you create a life that reflects your values and fosters mutual respect.